and girls from my class and any other students, teachers, parents that might be listening. I started this YouTube channel, Connolly Math at Home, to get my students learning, but also decided that if it benefits my students, it might benefit your student or your kid at home during this tough time. If you have any topics you want me to cover, you can email connollymathathome@gmail.com. Just pay attention, that's an O there, not an E. I know sometimes it's spelled like that. So connollymathathome@gmail.com. If you have any questions, like, subscribe, and share. Let's get as many students learning at home as possible. And today's topic is going to be multiplying a whole number by a mixed number. Okay, so I'm starting with topics that my students are covering this week, but like I said, feel free to send me any questions that you might have. So, a whole number times a mixed number. So what does that mean? That means a whole number times a mixed number. A mixed number is a number with a whole number and a fraction. Okay, so when we're thinking about this, it's nice to give the story problem context. So let's say that I am buying bags of oranges. I'm going to buy 8 bags of oranges, and they each weigh 2 1/4 pounds. How many total pounds of oranges am I buying? Okay, so we have 8 groups of 2 1/4 pounds. If you've been watching some of my other videos, it's a really important concept that you know that the multiplication symbol stands for groups of. So when we're talking about whole numbers, we have 3 groups of 4. That's 12, as you know, but the way that students start to think about this as 3 groups of 4, 4 plus 4 plus 4. It's repeated addition. I have a video about multiplying a whole number by a fraction, and that goes into depth with that concept there that we're going to tackle up here. So let's get ready for whole number times mixed number. So if you wanted to think about this as repeated addition, that's totally fine. That will help you. You would add 2 1/4 8 times because you have 8 groups of 2 1/4. So that's totally fine if you wanted to do that. But obviously there's more efficient ways of solving, and that's what we would like to do. Okay, so when we're thinking about this, I want to think about if we just grabbed the 2 pounds at once. Okay, so let's say that you go to the grocery store and you're grabbing the oranges, but let's say you grab 2 pounds at a time. That's a fact that we know how to solve. 8 groups of 2, we can do that. Okay, but then you're like, oh, 16 pounds of oranges isn't enough. I don't know, maybe you're stocking up for the quarantine, but 16 pounds isn't enough. I think I want to add 1/4 pound to each of those bags. So what you're going to do is you're going to add 1/4 pound to each of 8 bags. So that means that you are going to multiply 8 times 1/4 again. Okay, so I'm doing 8 groups of 1/4. I have these bags of oranges, right? So let me just illustrate. So there's 8 of these. And first, you put 2 pounds in each bag. And that's where we get the 8 groups of 16 from. Then you're like, oh, that's not enough. Let me sneak 1/4 of a pound more in each bag. So we have to show that we did 8 groups of 1/4 because we did it in each of the 8 bags. So if you watch that video of multiplying a whole number by a fraction, the denominator is not going to change. When we add fractions, it's repeated addition, 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4, all the way up 8 times. So we get 8/4. That video that I'm referring to about a whole number by a fraction also goes over improper fractions being changed to mixed numbers. So when you multiply 8 times 2, you have 16 pounds of oranges that you put in. When you added 1/4 of a pound of oranges to every single one of those 8 bags, you added another 2 pounds to your cart. That gives you a total of 18 pounds of oranges. Okay, so what did I do? I kept 8 whole. Okay, I kept 8 as a whole thing. I did not break it up, but I did break this factor into parts. And a good way to do this with mixed numbers is to break it into the whole number and into the fraction. Okay, so I did 8 times 2. I had to multiply by the whole number, and then I had to multiply by the fraction, And then I combined those two, what we call subproducts, to get our final answer. Okay, so let's think about another story problem context and another group of mixed numbers. I'm going to do one more for all of you. Okay, so let's say that I have 5 days that I'm going for a run, and each day, so 5 days, I'm going to run 2 2/3 miles. Okay, so I'm going to run 2 2/3 miles 5 times, so I have 5 groups of 2 2/3. Again, if you wanted to do this as repeated addition and you love working with mixed numbers, you can do 2 2/3 plus 2 2/3 plus 2 2/3 all the way up to 5 times. Okay, or we can think about keeping 5 whole and splitting up our other factor into the whole number and the fraction. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 5. Keep this number whole, multiplied by 2, which is my whole number. So if I only ran 2 miles each day, that would be 5 groups of 2 miles, which is 10 miles. I haven't been doing that, by the way. I've been inside. Anyways, back to what we're doing. Then I'm going to say also on those 5 days, each of 5 days I ran 2/3 extra miles. So I have to do it 5 times to show that I did the 2/3 also 5 times. Okay, so I did the 2 miles 5 times. I also did the 2/3 5 times. So if we think about 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3, or if you watch my video and see that we're multiplying the whole number by the numerator because the denominator is not going to change, you'll see that we get 10/3. Okay, also we could add these together like this and say I ran 10 10/3 miles. And that's technically a correct answer. However, that's not how we're used to seeing numbers, especially when people talk about the distance that they ran. So we're going to change this improper fraction into a mixed number. So I'm going to put the 10 to the side over here. And I'm going to think about how many groups of 3/3 go into 10/3, because 3/3 is the same as 1 whole. Okay? So if I'm thinking about 10/3, I can do 3/3 plus 3/3. That means I'm at 6/3. Another group of 3/3, that's 9/3. And I have one more third left over. Okay, again, watch that video about multiplying the whole number by the fraction. So 3/3 plus 3/3 is 6/3, 9/3, 10/3. So what does all of this mean? That means I have 10 plus a whole, plus another whole, plus another whole, plus 1/3, which gives us a total of 13 1/3 miles that I ran in those 5 days. Okay, goals. Anyways, so this is one way that your student might be learning about it. Some of them might recognize right away that this is 13 1/3, but if they need to, what we call decompose the fraction, that's there. Okay, and I think I'll make a whole video on decomposing fractions and turning improper fractions to whole numbers or to mixed numbers, because it is difficult for children sometimes. So that's how we're going to be multiplying a whole number times a mixed number. You're going to take the whole number and multiply it by the whole number. Then you are going to take the whole number, multiply it by the fraction, and then we combine. Okay, so it's similar to a strategy you learned with whole numbers called keeping one number whole. This is how we're going to do it with mixed numbers. Okay, so if you have any questions, you're in my class, please reach out. If you have any questions and you're watching this from your own home, connellymathathome@gmail.com. And I'm happy to help any students who need help during this quarantine. Talk to you later.